Welcome to the second episode of the Epstein conspiracy. If you haven't watched the first one, go watch it, then come back. In the first video, I talk about what I think happened and how I think the jail was paid off to kill him and how these two guards are framed for it. Um, we left last video talking about Tova Noel and her finances. We haven't found anything that's like any damning evidence, but there is one sentence from time.com. It says, in addition to the video footage, prosecutors said they plan to present some paper and bank records as evidence. What are your thoughts on that, JR?
I think there's one of two things that are going to come from that. It's going to show that they've done multiple sessions of online shopping uh, in their dereliction of duty, or they can use these bank records to argue that they were in a financial situation that was so dire that they might be susceptible to bribery. And bribed for what? I don't know. Maybe we can talk about it and find out. Because there's very limited options as to what could have happened in that cell that night. Uh, they've already said that no other people came in and out of the cell block, so something is going to be there that has to do with these two guards, and I believe that their financial records are going to tell us more than if they were just shopping. I think that if they have been disregarding their duties for any extended period of time before Epstein came to the jail, then this is just an old habit of theirs. And it's possible that it became a perfect storm of incompetence and equipment being in disrepair and everything that led to the opportunity for him to actually hang himself and not be killed. Or if this is something that seems that just popped up, then it seems to be a cover up. What do you think?
You know, when you step back and look at this, in the black book that we found, some of these names that he had as contacts, the amount of money that could potentially go into this
Yes.
is mind blowing. There's no amount that you could there's no dollar amount that it I mean, it's just there's so much money. I mean, you're talking about billionaires, and I mean there's multiple of them.
Hmm.
So when you look at these prison guards, I don't think it would take a lot to corrupt them
You know, that's a good question.
if
A good
they
point.
actually if they actually did it. That's a huge if.
Right. Right.
That's my conspiracy. I think, like I said, I think the whole jail was paid off, like from the guy that controls where Epstein goes to the guy that controls the cameras to these two guards.
Well, it would have to. If there was a grand conspiracy, you would have to select, which cell he stays in. Whoever is in charge of that would have to be in on it.
Right,
Let's talk quickly about who all has to be on it. The person who controls which cell he goes to, which would not be one of these two guards.
right,
Then these actual two guards themselves, and then there's the possibility of a third actor, maybe an inmate in the same housing area that had connections or that was willing to do it for a specific amount of money. So you're talking at least three people minimum.
right. And just like I said, the amount of money, it's
It's
these
there.
it's there. These three people could start brand new lives. I mean, just like that.
Absolutely.
One one little correction in the last video, we were talking about how he potentially hanged himself. We found I found the cartoon picture, and I noticed on the picture it has double doors. On the outside is a steel solid door. I don't know if it's steel, it's just solid. And then on the inside are the iron bars. So I'm guessing that's where he hung himself.
Could be.
I don't see anywhere else in that room that he did it.
Yeah, and it's interesting that they would take someone who is who they believe, if we believe their official story, is suicidal and would put them in a room that has bars that they could potentially hang themselves from.
Right.
So someone had to make that decision and say, hey, you know what? This guy tried to hang himself. I think he'll be okay if we put him right back in the same kind of room where he almost hung himself.
You know, I get to the point to where I'm like, maybe he did just kill himself. But when you step back and look at the facts, he had a cellmate up until this point.
Hmm.
Why did they take him away? Why did they take him off of suicide watch? When he went to court, why were there no visible markings on him? It's just those nagging questions that tell me it's a conspiracy.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So too many things fell into place at exactly the right time. It seemed to be outside of his control. With the cameras, the two cameras facing his room not being functional, with the transfer of the cellmate the day of the same, we believe the same cellmate Tartaglione that was in there with him on the incident a few days prior is attempted suicide.
On that CNN timeline,
Yeah.
um, when we were going over when he was in jail before he killed himself, I noticed that I think we might have covered this, but I just want to be sure. Um, Tova Noel. What
Hmm.
was the other guy's name?
Michael
It was Michael something. I remember the Michael. Um,
Michael
it,
Thomas.
in that part, it had Tova Noel, unnamed guard number one.
Uh-huh.
Then a few blocks down, it had um, un, uh, guard unnamed number two. So there's a third guard. I don't know if he just got off his shift or if he swapped with Michael, um, because it said Tova was doing two back-to-back 8-hour shifts, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And this was the first of two back-to-back 8-hour shifts. So she was fresh into her first double when when they started following this timeline the day or the evening of his death.
So August the 9th at 4 p.m. it says Tova Noel, whatever. Noel and unnamed officer number one. And then this officer number two shows up at 10 p.m. Noel and unnamed officer number two do not perform the required 10 p.m. count.
Hmm.
So there's three guards.
I believe that number three might be Michael Thomas.
So who's number two?
I don't know. It's someone that probably left before his death. Um, and I think that's the reason why they're only questioning and sending indictments down for Tobin Noel and Michael Thomas. Because they were probably the only two that were in the cell block that night and who were ultimately responsible for his safety.
So let me propose this. This kind of brings a new factor into the thing here. What if this guard number two and Tova Noel walk up in there, string him up, leave? Michael Thomas comes on duty, and maybe Tova's she's in on it. Michael's not. Maybe since he's not performing checks, he don't know dude's dead.
Hmm.
So Tova Noel and this unnamed number two that just magically disappeared, and he hasn't been subpoenaed or arrested or anything like that. But that could have just been a special hitman.
Yeah, and they say they took him back to his cell at so and so forth time that night. I think it was 7:49 or something.
749, yes.
How do we know that when they took him in there and put him in his cell, that they didn't strangle him and string him up right there and just walk off and leave him?
Because it says at 10 p.m., like I said earlier, officer number two, do not perform 10 p.m. count.
Hmm.
So, well, that kind of makes me wonder if officer two is Michael Thomas,
Could be.
because officer number one is nowhere to be seen past 4 o'clock.
Hmm. Yeah, I would like to see the autopsy results where they actually establish the time of death,
Yeah,
because the body will start losing temperature in the time that it ceases to be alive. And so the temperature reading, combined with the environment variables, the temperature, the jail, you do that on a little slide scale there, and it'll tell you, give you a pretty accurate close window as to how long the man lay dead. And that would tell us exactly when it happened. And knowing when it happened seems to be a key factor there. I haven't seen anything released yet as to,
time of death.
yeah, the time of death, no established time of death. I haven't seen that. Still doesn't change the fact, though, that the man had those injuries in his neck that was consistent with homicidal strangulation. There's so many factors here, that so many things that had to come into place, that it very well could have been suicide, or it seems like it could have, someone could have murdered the man. I think if they murdered the man, that they most likely would have done it when they brought him back from his jail cell.
That's
749.
that's kind of what I thought, because that is the only time that the cameras and whatnot know that the guards delivered him.
Yes.
Past that, they didn't get up, they didn't perform their checks, so that makes sense that that would be the time that they do it,
That's what I think. I think if
if
guards
they are
did,
guilty.
if they're guilty, I think if they did it when they brought him back to his cell after his meeting with his lawyer, that they, went in, strangled him, strung him up, and walked out and shut the door, and then just hung out until the shift was over. Because you would have to not do your job in order to leave him in there to try to cover your tracks.
Right,
Do you see what I mean? You can't say that, at 7:49 we took him back to his jail cell, and at 10 o'clock when we did checks we found him dead.
right.
So it would serve them better that if he was found in the morning after being strung up all night.
So let's get down to it. Let's get to the juicy stuff. This episode and this whole channel is built on conspiracy theories. So let us have it. Tell us who you think paid for it and how it went down.
I believe it's hard to say who paid for it. Hard to say who paid for it. There's several people that stand to lose something. I believe probably one of the strongest competitors for this would have been the Prince.
Yes.
I believe Prince Andrew, with his closest ties that he had to Jeffrey Epstein, I believe that he would probably be up in the front runner, front contender for funding his murder. I believe that possibly Tova Noel or Michael Thomas would have been financially susceptible, may have been struggling a little bit with their finances, and would have easily accepted a meager bribe to strangle and hang this man in his cell, and then just to go hang out all night for the rest of their shift.
I completely agree. So last episode I said that I did the typical Hillary Clinton did it.
Yeah.
But after all these news articles have come out about Prince Andrew, I got to backpedal. He with that picture of him in Virginia
Yes.
at wherever that was, him sitting there on TV with the reporter right in front of him saying that that's not him, that he didn't have his hand around her waist,
Mm-hmm.
that the picture was doctored. Either this dude is just mental, or he legit has so much to hide that he can't stand himself.
Yeah, I think he stands the most to lose because I believe he was heavily involved in on the pedophile ring. I believe that more actors uh, would have come and gone, hanging out and partying with Epstein. He's a rich financier, and these rich people all are in some of the same social circles. Just being seen with him or being known as a friend of his doesn't imply very much. But Prince Andrew's the only one that you see in the photos with one of the victims. The victim herself actually said that Epstein paid her money to have sex with Prince Andrew when she was 17.
Well,
And when they did the interview,
he's not the only one.
right, he's not the only one. You're absolutely right. He's not the only one, but I believe he had the heaviest involvement. I believe
Yes.
he had spent the most time with Epstein and had his hands the deepest in, uh, their little ring that they were running. And
Yes.
so, almost partner level, best friend level, um, using his services, hanging out with him, doing the things he's doing the most. And so I think he has the most to lose from this. And he's wealthy enough to make something happen. I believe he would be a strong contender for the financing.
Hmm.
And I believe those two guards would be the strongest contenders of if he was murdered, who actually murdered him.
I completely agree. And for the viewers that don't know, when I chirped in there and said that he wasn't the only one, we found a picture of this guy. His name is, now JR, you might have to help me with this one. Flavio Briatore?
Yeah,
Briatore? Something like that.
yeah, I believe Flavio Briatore, something like that.
We got this name through Epstein's little black book that he used to keep. The black book was kept by his butler, but it was stolen from him back in 2005, and the person that stole it tried to sell it. But so when all this Epstein stuff came out, this black book was published. Flavio was one of the contacts in there. And the only reason I picked out Flavio was because his name was circled in the black book. So Flavio is an Italian businessman. Um, he was convicted multiple times for fraud and conspiracy. And in those pictures, he was put with Virginia Roberts. I think her last name is different now, though. I forgot what it was.
Ufrey,
Yeah.
something like that. It seems hard to pronounce.
So Virginia Roberts, I don't know if there's more, but for sure connects Epstein, Prince Andrew, and this Flavio guy. There were a few more in there, and a lot of the contacts in this book, it's just name, address, whatever. The ones that had the most information on them were modeling agencies. I don't know why. I guess when he needed pedophile stuff, that's who he'd call, or he'd call his fixer, Sarah Kellen. But I think a lot of these people were pulled from modeling agencies.
Yeah, I believe you're right. I believe some of these modeling agencies were set up as a front to
Yes,
groom some of these young girls. Modeling agencies are known for using teen girls or post-pubescent girls. Uh,
and that kind of brings it to, what'd you say this name was? Jean-Luc
yeah.
Brunel,
Mm-hmm.
French modeling agent. He owns MC2 Modeling, but guess who financed it?
Jeffrey
Epstein.
Epstein.
Epstein, yes. So that's that. I guess that's how they got a lot of their girls. I'm gonna guess. Um, I don't know how. Do you know how they got Virginia Roberts?
I don't know.
Okay, but that's my guess that they just go through all these modeling agencies. Now, the one I've noticed is a lot of them are foreign agencies. Like this one with John Luke is a French modeling agency. So maybe the foreigners were younger and I don't know. Maybe he liked them more.
I think some of the laws in some of those countries were a little less restrictive on age of consent.
That would make sense.
Yeah, because I know in certain countries, 16. I believe in France it's 16 or 14. It's much lower. Some of these areas are much lower than the United States. Several of these allegations, the indictments, revolve around what happened at his New York home and his Palm Beach home. So, with the connections he had in Europe, there's no telling how many victims there are strung about and how many rendezvous he had set up with people like Prince Andrew.
The description of the black book I found, it said it had phone numbers of more than 100 victims plus hundreds of social contacts.
Mm-hmm.
So think about this. Let's just say there's 100 Jeffrey Epsteins with the same money and what he's committed, what he was arrested on, the sex trafficking, the pedophile, whatever. These are powerful people
Mm-hmm.
like Prince Andrew. Do you think Prince Andrew will go to jail for any of this?
No,
Why?
I don't think anybody else is going to go to jail for any of this.
Besides the guards.
I think the guards are going to get very light convictions for falsifying records, and they won't talk about anything else. Now, Tobin Noel has said that she's going to come out and tell everything, but I believe the only thing she is going to tell would be to throw other guards or her superiors under the bus,
Yeah.
or doing the same thing about not doing their job or reporting it. I I just feel like she's going to try to make herself seem like a champion where, she says, yes, I didn't do this or I didn't do that, but it was because nobody cared and the superiors didn't care. And we complained all the time about the cameras or this or that and being overstaffed, understaffed. She's gonna get in there and say that this was a culture of incompetency that she did not agree with but went along with because it was her job. Guarantee that's going to be what her defense is.
And you're right, because part of the article I saw yesterday or the day before was how they were going to talk about the jailhouse conditions, of working long hours and double shifts and
Mm.
just the low pay, I guess. My next question is, do you think they're going to try these guards for murder? Not murder. Would you call it manslaughter? Involuntary manslaughter?
No, no, not at all. I don't think they're going to charge them with anything. I think the cover up is already, you know, there's not enough evidence to charge them with anything, even if they did it. I haven't heard anything about them going through and checking, the bed sheets for, skin cell DNA, like that might be present if you were aggressively pulling, a sheet around someone's neck. Some of your skin, epithelial cells are going to rub off from your hands, onto these sheets where you're tugging on them. I don't think they've done any tests along those lines. It seems to be that any of the things that you think might would have happened if you found someone like that, say the investigation's not being done. It seems they're lynching their investigation to testimony and video camera evidence. But without video camera evidence of what happened at his cell, and with the people giving the testimony are potentially the people who are standing to financially benefit from the conspiracy, you're never going to get the truth out of that, and so therefore you'll never get a conviction. I think what's going to happen is they're going to get a little bit of trouble for lying about what happened. I think the MCC might even get sued. There might be some kind of lawsuit. Somebody is going to turn up and want some money. And then I think, the thing with Prince Andrew and these other people are going to pop up in the news every so often. You know, people are going to bring it up or are going to talk about it, but nothing's going to come of it, and it's just going to fade away. And they're going to all continue doing what they've been doing.
The ring will go on and on.
Hmm.
Well, do you have any closing thoughts?
I think we're going to see some changes in the upcoming court dates and the indictment on the guards, but I don't think any bombshells are going to be released or dropped that give us anything more as to whether or not the man actually killed himself. I believe that's gonna be one of those conspiracies that continues on.
So, what would kill this conspiracy for me is when they guards go to trial, and it comes out that they've been falsifying documents way before Epstein even got there. I think that would kill the conspiracy for me. That would pretty much prove that they were just lazy and they had no part in it, and dude just hung himself.
Yeah.
But if it comes out that they started falsifying documents, either when he got there or just a day or so before he hung himself, to me that just confirms a conspiracy.
Yes, you're absolutely correct on that, and I think that timeline right there is going to be very important on shredding a light of truth as to what's actually happening. And I think regardless of what happens with them, it's not going to affect any of the people that were involved with him and what they were doing. I think they will continue on because they have the money and the power.
I agree. Well, guys, I want to thank you for listening. Tune into the next episode where we talk about the mind control. We'll talk to y'all later.